It's the 28th day of June, 2015, and this is the Radical Agnostic, the place where ideology comes to die. My name is John. My co-host, as always, Mark Beef.
Hello.
And sitting in for Brian Richter, the stowaway guest today is Nick Richardson.
I've been promoted.
He's been promoted from guest to stowaway guest. We're going to talk about current events, about this, that, and the other. As usual, I have a cockamamie theory that I'm going to run by you guys. And it's going to be great, everybody. And next week, the stowaway guest is going to be Katie Rogers, who's been on the show before. And then we're going to try to get a guest. If we don't get one, we'll have Nick here, if you're available. And so that'll round it out for the four of us.
Me and Katie are going to fist fight.
Yes, obviously. After you mud wrestle.
Oh, well, in that case, I'm definitely available.
Yeah. Katie, I don't know, Mark. You better be ready.
I think she could take you.
Let's start with a quote.
I'm a rainbow belt.
You're a rainbow belt. You wear all the belts at the same time from all the different martial arts.
Hey, just because he self-identifies as a rainbow belt,
That's
John,
true.
doesn't mean you're allowed to judge him.
Let's start with a quote. Quote, I do not believe anything. Most people, even the educated, think that everybody must believe something or other. That if one is not a theist, one must be a dogmatic atheist. And if one does not think capitalism is perfect, one must believe fervently in socialism. And if one does not have blind faith in X, one must alternatively have blind faith in not X, or the reverse of X. My own opinion is that belief is the death of intelligence. Unquote. Robert Anton Wilson. This guy was a really interesting writer who was influential to me. He was friends with Timothy Leary, the great LSD Harvard experimenter of the 1960s and cultural figure. Wilson was a futurist, so futurists are hard to describe. They're people who are... like right now, the futurists are kind of dominated by the transhumanists, who are the people that want to use technology to download their consciousness into a computer so that they can live for eternity. Of course, this technology doesn't exist yet, but they think that it's getting there, maybe. But the futurists of the 80s and 90s, which is when Wilson was writing, they were sort of obsessed with evolution of the mind and evolution of consciousness. And they wanted to build a better world. They weren't, I mean, I guess you'd have to call them liberals, but they weren't really aligned with any political ideology of the day. And so check out Robert Anton Wilson. He has a lot of books if you're interested in any of the strange things that I just said. So what are we? Episode 17, guys. Should we hit some current events?
Sure. What's current?
Did anything happen this week?
Nothing big.
I don't think it was a very significant week for any issue.
Yeah. Those escaped fugitives in upstate New York. So those of you who don't know, there were two cold-blooded murderers who were in prison for life.
They're reptiles?
Thank you, Mark. Two reptilian...
You did say cold-blooded, so you
true.
brought it on yourself.
They got that homely young woman who worked in the prison to... they exchanged sexual favors for her cooperation.
Well, and the plan was they were going to kill her husband, right? They were going to get out and go to her house and kill her husband.
She was in on that.
Yeah, and she wanted him to do
right.
that.
Yeah,
so.
That's what I heard at one point, and now that's kind of being confusing, and no one really knows. But they did arrest her. She's definitely guilty of smuggling in saw blades and crap. So they sawed their way through the wall, got into some duct, scaled something, got cut through the fence. I don't know. They got out. It's amazing. It's funny because everyone you talk to is like, I kind of hope they get away. You know, like even though they're horrible, these guys are bad dudes. Like the one guy cut cut someone up into pieces, and like after torturing and murdering him. That's why he's in jail. But anyway, everyone's kind of like rooting for these guys.
It's so funny that in pop culture, we're always obsessed with people escaping from prison. It's like it's always a Shawshank Redemption, the show Prison Break. But we always make a point to say, "Oh well, they were innocent before they escaped." Yeah, because no one wants to cheer for a serial killer who gets out of prison.
You have to make it morally okay.
Yeah,
like my theory about zombie movies and TV, which is that they make it morally okay to kill your family and neighbors. The zombie scenario.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's the only way you can blow your daughter's head off with a shotgun and feel okay about it, is if she's a zombie. And that's what I think is part of what's behind the cultural love of zombies. It's this idea of killing the people down the street from you.
Well, I think we're culturally in love with breaking out of prison too, because everybody likes to think of that scenario where, like, I've been falsely convicted and I'm in prison, and could I outsmart and could I get out?
Yeah.
But again, it always starts with, I'm falsely convicted. No one wants to see like actual murderers get out. Then it's not so sexy. Then it's just kind of like, oh, I hope we catch them.
Yeah. Well, there were some articles out there that was like, the fugitives in New York are not the Shawshank Redemption. There's like people trying to like get us all in line and not root for these guys. It's like, these are not good guys. I'm like, yes.
But what was Tim Robbins in prison for in the Shawshank?
Killing his wife.
Yeah.
Or, well, allegedly.
That's
allegedly.
Right. He was falsely accused of killing his wife.
Yeah.
Because someone set him up, right?
Wasn't it like she was having an affair or something? I can't remember. I can't remember.
But he didn't do it. He didn't do it. I know that.
Well, that's what he says.
Well, it was the movie. They showed you.
Yeah, but the movie was from his point of view.
It would be funny if like he makes it down to Mexico and then they flash back and show that he actually did kill her, and then you feel like an asshole for cheering for him for the whole movie. You're like, damn.
I would just be like, oh well.
Yeah.
I'm still a fan. So like a couple days ago, I was watching the news on these fugitives who are running up through upstate New York, which is where I'm from and where my mom still lives, and my dad's still up there too. And it's like 1 million square miles of forest. And New York is a very large state. It's about the size of Germany. And it's just trees. Like, that's where I'm from. I'm not from New York City. I'm from the Albany area. So it's just beautiful mountains and forests everywhere. And these guys are just crawling up there north trying to get to Canada. And like that's what my mom said. She's like, I think they're probably going to Canada. And that's what everyone was saying, you know. That's the smart move. And she kind of seemed to think that they would maybe get away, and I was telling her they're not going to get away.
Well, and getting into Canada you're not safe at that point.
No,
that's one of those big myths that people think like, oh, if I just make it across the state line, like
amnesty.
Then they will arrest you and just simply send you back.
Yeah, and you know they have no money. They can't use credit cards. They can't, take public transport. They can't get on a train or a bus or a plane or anything, or even a cab. I mean, maybe if they steal some cash, they can get in a cab. But a couple days ago, anyway, I posted on Facebook.
But you still need a passport too to get to Canada, which I'm going to go and guess they don't have any access to.
Absolutely true. Yeah, I don't know how well the border is.
No, there's places you can cross in Canada that you don't have to deal with guards, just like Mexican border.
Is there a fence?
Well, there's not as much of one as there is U.S.-Mexico.
No, no.
But there are places where it's more heavily guarded than others.
In fact,
checkpoints and stuff.
I remember hearing that the Canada-U.S. border is the largest unguarded, quote-unquote, border in the world.
But I have a feeling, though, while these guys are on the loose, if we seriously think they're going to Canada, then maybe those certain places where they could cross are going to be a little more heavily guarded.
Exactly. For anywhere in the New York area is going to be, for sure. So anyway, a couple days ago, I got a feeling, I got a hunch, and I wrote on Facebook, I predict these guys will be apprehended in the next 48 hours. And about 24 hours later, they shot the one guy. And of course, we all knew that they weren't going to just go quietly. They're not going to go back to solitary after this, man. I mean, it's just hell in there. So you're going to go down shooting, and that's what the one guy did. So he got killed by a Border Patrol agent, actually, because there's about 1,200 law enforcement officers mobilized right now looking for these guys. Imagine the cost. Imagine the taxpayer cost of that, too. Yeah. But you got to get them. You can't let people escape from prison, I guess. It just sets a bad precedent. So the other guy's still on the loose. So I was kind of half right in my prediction. I'm pretty proud of that.
Which, by the way, corrections officers are some of the lowest paid people in this country. So we pay the people who are supposed to keep them in prison just the bare minimum. But then once they escape, we spend so much money then trying to reapprehend them.
Good point. And they arrested another guy for helping, too, the other day. And he just went off. He was talking to the press, and he was like, he looked like the typical upstate New York prison guard. He was just like this 70-year-old grizzled, and he was saying when you work as a prison guard, at first it's depressing, and then it's horrible, and then it'll make you want to shoot yourself. That's what he was saying about his job.
It really is a terrible job.
It's a horrible job. You get feces thrown at you on the regular, literally. Everyone's screaming at you.
Well, a lot of your coworkers aren't so keen either.
Aren't what?
So keen. A lot of COs are just as fucking brutal and wannabe oppressors as regular cops or fucking, somebody who wants power. Yeah. A lot of them go into that job wanting power.
And they can't get accepted to the police. Right. I don't want to insult any corrections officer. I mean, I know there's some...
No, I had a friend who was a corrections officer, and he worked there for about a year, and then he quit because he couldn't fucking deal with
it's
all
horrible.
Shit.
I mean, I was a psych ward tech, and that's kind of the nice version of corrections officer. It's a lot nicer, but some of the same stuff will happen. We still have to have a show about that. I have so many stories from working in the psych hospital. I think people would be interested about that. What do we have? Oh, man. These are just random points that I'm going to throw out there. Facebook, I just want people to know that if a meme comes up that shows a pile of $100 bills and says, if you share this, you'll find money tomorrow, it's not magic. Don't share it.
What?
You haven't seen that? If you love Jesus, share. If you hate him, ignore.
Well, it's the modern version of the old chain mails, where it's like, if you don't send this to 7 friends, you're going to die tomorrow. Yeah.
Even if you're not friends with Jesus on Facebook, most likely he's friends with one of your friends, and he'll see whether you shared it or not. And if you don't share it, he'll know you don't love him.
That's a good point.
What do you
Mark.
get?
That's a good point.
John, there's a lot of stupid people in the world.
I stand corrected.
I hate to have to fill you in on this point. There's a lot of stupid people in the world.
I know, but I just want to talk to them and just pat their shoulder gently and say, there's a reason they do that, because when you get shares and clicks, you know what, you can sell your Facebook page to a company, because now that Facebook page has exposure.
Ooh.
Yeah, the more shares and likes and clicks you get, the more feeds, the more people's feeds your shit.
Well, yeah, that's why the people do it. But the reason why the people click it,
my Facebook page is going up on eBay.
The reason they will give you is the same reason they will give you for, hey, why do you go to church every Sunday? Well, it's safer to do it than not to do
Pascal's wager.
You know what I mean? Like,
you might as well.
Yeah, I might as well, because it hurts nothing if I do it, other than everyone who's friends with me on Facebook now knows I'm an idiot. Versus, why do you go to church? Well, I don't know. It's 1 hour on, I don't know how long church is, 1 hour, 2 hours on Sunday. It's safer than not doing it.
Safer than not doing it.
Reminds me of a joke.
And hence an entire culture of religion is born, because why not?
So that reminds me of this joke. There's a single mom. She's got 2 kids. And she's very religious. And every night she does the same prayer. And she basically prays to God and says, God, if you'll just let me win the lottery just one time, I'll never ask you for anything else again. And I'll tithe. I'll give, 10% of the money away. Give some more money to charitable organizations. Like, if you'll just let me win this one time. And then the next day, of course, she doesn't win. So then the next night she prays the same thing. After about a month of doing this, she's praying her prayer. And all of a sudden she hears a giant booming voice say, Cheryl, you got to meet me halfway and at least buy the ticket.
That's a good, yeah, exactly. It shows the complete lack of rationality at play in this population. I've bought a few lottery tickets, but, you can't win if you don't play, Mark.
That's right.
I don't think
So in other words, if you really want that money, go buy a lottery ticket. Don't just share that stupid meme. Come on.
Seriously, man.
Well, I would argue that the same people who buy lottery tickets with the intent of getting rich are the same people that then put all their faith on winning said lottery into the hands of a
divine power.
Divine power. So,
and I don't think
well, everybody who wins sports ball events, it's because God made them.
Right.
Nobody ever blames God.
I want to thank
God hates me, and that's why I lost.
Oh my God!
I will do that after the next jiu-jitsu match I lose. I'd like to blame God for not helping me be better.
Well, Joe Rogan, I did my best, but I blame God.
I blame God.
God has it in for me.
Yeah.
I jacked off to those Caitlyn Jenner pictures.
Oh, sweet Jesus. It doesn't. What makes me mad about people that share those posts with the superstition thing, it's not that they're dumb or wrong. It's that there's some asshole who's exploiting them for being dumb, who's making money off of it. Because then you sell your Facebook page to a company after you've achieved all this visibility, and the company just changes the name to Nabisco. And then they say, this is the Nabisco Facebook page, and they post an ad, and it hits 200 million people's feeds.
You want to talk about the lowest
I think
form of
Nabisco
exploitation?
already has a Facebook page, probably.
Mark, you're fired from the show.
the lowest form of exploitation is when it like shows a kid with cancer.
Yeah.
And it's like one like equals one prayer.
Yeah. Help my dad get off drugs.
Yeah.
If I get a million likes, my dad gets off drugs.
will go to NA.
Yeah,
Oh,
this was like 10 years ago or 9 years ago when Facebook was first really coming up. And that was on there.
Yeah.
Click like a million likes and my dad quits drugs. And all the people are clicking it. I'm like,
I know.
Do you think the dad is sitting there with a needle watching the likes accrue? And if they don't reach the goal, he's just going to shoot up.
Yeah.
But if he does, he's just going to throw that needle in the garbage as soon because combating addiction is that easy. It's just all about how many likes you get.
There's just a lot of non-smart people out there, John.
I
hate to say
I'm going to make a meme tomorrow. Me holding a gun to a dog's head. Like this or I'll kill this dog.
Just see how many you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'll make it a pit bull so people, maybe want it to die. Because it's vicious. It's a vicious, cold-blooded murderer.
It's a vicious bad dog. So I don't know if everyone out there knows. We live in Tucson, which means... you have to be an advocate of pit bulls. So every single resident of Tucson owns a pit bull. 1 and 2 will tell you why they're not vicious dogs, and it's all about how you raise them and the owners and stuff.
Which I actually buy. Like,
I
definitely support pit bulls. Like, what, are we going to go kill every pit bull out there?
I've met so many nice pit bulls that just nuzzle up to you, and they're gigantic, and they jump in your lap, and they're nice as hell.
Yeah.
I've never had a problem. But
it's like with anything. Like, the breed itself was bred physically for fighting. Like, physically, they're great fighters.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they come out of the womb, like, ready, or whatever, dog womb. I don't know what dogs have. How the dog reproduction organs or whatever. Yeah. But they don't come out as vicious killers.
They don't have pouches like kangaroos.
Yeah, do they lay? Yeah, pit bull eggs are hatching. But it's the combination of what they're physically bred to do. Maybe they have emotional predisposition towards fighting. Maybe, but that doesn't mean that every
no more
pit
than
bull's...
any other dog a disposition towards fighting. But what I have found, and what you'll hear from these same people who advocate for that, they're great dogs and everything, like Brent. He'll tell you, like, these pit bull haters are assholes and stuff, and it's not about the dog, it's about the owner. And then 5 minutes later, he'll tell you about the 2, I think, or 3 different dogs that he's had to shoot with a handgun because they were fighting each other, and they will fight to the death. And I babysat.
Were they rescues, though? Like, did they grow up in that environment?
I don't think so. I thought he had them from puppies. Dogs. And Brent, by the way, is a great dog owner, and his dogs are great and everything. And he did do the right thing when he shot them, because he had to. They were the one was killing the other, or had already killed the other. And when they do kill another dog, you're supposed to kill them. You're supposed to put them down, because
that's what it says in the Bible.
No, I think that's a good idea.
No, it says it in the Bible.
To put down a dog.
It says, if dog will kill another dog, you must put that dog down.
Leviticus 33:18.
Yeah. That's definitely Leviticus.
Yeah. All the bad ones are in Leviticus.
No, but so I mean, I completely understand the point, but nobody says, polar bears are nice. It's just when you how you raise them, they can be vicious, or tigers, or any other animal. Saying? I'm just saying maybe there are things in animals that is born and not
nature rather than nurture. Well, but the thing is with dogs though is that they're completely domesticated.
Yeah, that's a different species. Well, Pit bull is a subspecies.
A tiger is not domesticated.
But what I'm saying is so the dog and they are domesticated for people,
right?
But like what you're talking about with Brent is the other dogs,
yeah,
and
because they have a lot pecking order.
Yeah, and a lot of pit bulls, if they don't, the dogs they hang out with, they'll be cool with, but if they don't.
Yeah, but even then, I babysit. I don't know anything about dogs. I love cats, even though that makes me a pussy apparently. But I dog sat for these 5 pit bulls and 2 cats for this guy, and I didn't know anything about dogs, but he just told me what to do and let them out and give them the food twice a day or whatever, and I did it and everything was fine. And my philosophy with big dogs is just, I don't know how to deal with them that well, but just be calm. Just be calm and be confident, and they'll do what you say. I mean, I'm in charge, not them. Yeah. So, and that worked out just fine. And I was horrified to learn, like a month later after I did that gig, those dogs, which loved each other, they were playing around all the time, they got into a scrap, and one of them murdered the alpha, I think, got murdered. Well, but anyway, he got killed and eaten by the other dogs. And what I hear is that those pit bulls, they'll start playing, and then it'll get a little rough, and then they won't stop. Like, that's the distinctive thing about that breed, is that once they start fighting, once it turns into a fight, they won't stop until the other thing is dead.
Right.
That's what I hear really is natural to that
So
breed.
that is proven, though, just for pit bulls?
No.
Because I was going to say, because I don't
for them versus like a lot of other breeds, like pugs and stuff.
Yeah, because I guess you never hear about poodles.
Yeah,
that tear
all
each other.
Those little dogs.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm definitely not one of these people that's like, all pit bulls need to go. Because I mean, we've all seen plenty of pit bulls that are perfectly
they're
fine.
Nice. Yeah,
but I do think there needs to be an understanding that they may be predisposed to certain behaviors,
and to raise them with that in mind.
Well, yeah, and then once you add that to it, I mean, if you train a pit bull to be a fighter, then you're creating a monster at that point.
Yeah.
But then, I think as long as we all agree that maybe they are predisposed to some of those behaviors, and then you don't, push them towards that,
right?
Then I don't see any problem.
But see, the problem is though that these guys, like Brent and this guy that I dog sat for, were great owners. I mean, great, and they had multiple pit bulls, but. That was the only risk factor. They were great dog owners, so I don't know what they could have done differently, or,
like I said,
or maybe they just accepted.
Were those pit bulls that he raised from the time they were puppies, or were they ones that he rescued? Because that's the other thing is sometimes you get rescues that have been predisposed to that, and maybe you don't know the extent, and they seem great until something triggers, and then kind of that way that they were nurtured before
just comes out,
and
we got to ask Brian because he rescued a female pit bull, and it's a little girl, but she's still way bigger than Brian's other dogs. Brian's known for his little dogs, and so he's got I think the 3 little guys right now, and then Bonnie's a little bit bigger. She's about 30 pounds, but yeah, this female pit bull is like I don't know. 80 pounds, 60.
They're big dogs.
Yeah, and so I wonder how he feels about it. But anyway, on that animal tip, last night I was looking up the megafauna from just after the dinosaurs died out here in North and South America. There were these giant mammals running around. And have you guys heard of the giant land sloth? Mm-hmm. It was the size of a modern elephant. It was a sloth, mostly quadrupedal, but it had adaptations for bipedal motion too. So the thing was like walking around on 2 legs sometimes. I thought it was big. Like I was talking to Paula, and I was like, "Yeah, this is like 6 feet tall. This creature." And then I looked it up, and it was 10 feet long, and the weight and size of an elephant. saber-toothed cats.
Yeah, was it omnivore or?
Yeah, well, they don't know. They don't know, and they really don't know what it.
Sloths are mostly herbivores.
Well, modern day sloths,
right.
But that could have been. I mean,
yeah.
Well, to maintain that size, you would think that they would have to eat some animals.
But if you're that big and that slow, you're not going to catch many animals. Hence, why elephants are
very
herbivores.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. And they think the bipedal thing was so it could reach up and grab. It had powerful arms and just grab those branches, pull them down.
It's something I've always found super interesting is like why certain things have died out, just the entire concept of evolution.
Right.
And why certain things survived and why certain things didn't survive. And
cryptozoology, which is the awesome study of extinct and or mythical creatures. But I guess when the dinosaurs died, it just opened the door for the only mammals were these little mice.
Yeah,
these little rat things,
little things that survived,
little squirrely guys, and then those are our ancestors, apparently, essentially, and that giant sloth was pretty cool.
Is that where we're going with this?
That was it.
Just a giant sloth.
I had something else to say, but I lost it. All right, let's do it, guys. The Confederate flag.
We should have saved these happy topics for later because it's going to get sad in here.
So this stupid flag, and I say that with the understanding that it does. There are people out there who are not probably racist who love that flag and that it means something for them. Unfortunately, with every societal shift that happens, there's losers. No matter how morally great it is. If it's abortion illegal, abortion legal. If it's gay marriage legal, gay marriage illegal. Every change, every shift has losers. And the losers in this case are the noble Southerners of our country who love that flag and who are good people, good folk. And they're the losers, and this of course is just my opinion on the matter. They're the losers in this thing, and that the flag, just take it down. It's ridiculous.
From government buildings.
Take it down from government buildings.
I 100% agree. If you want to fly the Confederate flag at your house, no one's trying to stop you from that.
No,
if you want to put it on your truck,
there are people.
Well, there are people, but we're not,
or maybe not trying to stop you, but feel that it's their right, and you should not have the right to fly that.
But forget those people. Those people are wrong. You can't stop someone from flying whatever. I mean, hell, if you want to put a Nazi flag on your truck, feel free. Just prepare for the consequences of doing such. Like, people are going to judge you negatively.
Right.
We had this conversation the first episode I was ever on, like episode 10, where I talked about, I for those of you who don't know, I lived in Georgia for the past 4 years, essentially, when I was in the Army. And it was really weird to me driving down roads named after Confederate generals.
Did you see the flag a lot?
Oh, I see. Yeah, you see the flag
all the time.
You see the flag all the time. Now, on private property.
Yeah.
I didn't see, except for
the
actual Georgia state flag is derivative of the original. Well, first off, what people think of as a Confederate flag is not. That's the battle flag of the Army of Northern Virginia.
Right.
That's not the actual what was the actual stars and bars and the actual Confederate flag was. I want to say
I'll tell you.
It was alternating red and white stripes. Yep. I want to say 4 or 5 of them.
There were only like 3 or 4. They were big.
Yeah, and
they were horizontal.
And then in the corner,
just like American flag.
Yeah, and then in the corner was a circle of stars,
just like ours was at the time.
Yes,
but there were just fewer stars.
So that was the Confederate flag. That was the Confederate flag. Well,
at the beginning,
the first one
at the beginning,
and then eventually it became a white field, and then it became a white field with a red vertical stripe on the side.
Well, it was what you said with the big thing, but it looked too much like the American flag. That was the criticism of it.
Well, so then they got rid of the red and white stripes. And
they got rid of the whole thing, and they put that battle flag, the Confederate flag, up in the left corner
with just a white field.
With a white field.
And then they eventually added a red, because it looked too much like a surrender flag.
So they added a vertical red stripe on the right.
So my point is, it was never even the flag of the Confederate States of America.
But it was in there.
It was one of the flags, just like
no. It was
flag.
The flag that they're flying over South Carolina. The flag that was flying over South Carolina was never the flag of the Confederate States of America.
But that whole flag was in their flag. It was in the corner.
Yeah, it was a small part in the corner.
Well, it was there. It was there. It was the
Well,
No,
but
my
wasn't
point
in the
is-
first one though.
not that.
But my
by,
point is,
by
though-
1862, it wasn't.
So anyone who's claiming, though, that flag flying over the capital of South Carolina is some sort of history. No, that was the flag of an army of Virginia, of a different freaking state. That wasn't even the state of South Carolina. At no point did that flag have anything to do with South Carolina.
Right.
So why they chose to fly that flag, it just shows that either they don't understand the history, which I have a hard time believing, or why they chose that flag, I don't know. But then also, that is the flag.
Well, it was in the 20th century that flag popped up again.
Because that's become the flag that symbolizes the Southern cause during the Civil War.
Right. And for example, and this is an important point, and that flag was not flying above the capital of South Carolina until 1962, when it was raised as a protest against...
what was going on during that time, I wonder? I wonder why they chose
guy
that
I'd
time.
like to call the Civil Rights Act.
Oh,
and that was a
weird.
protest against the Civil Rights Act. So if you say there's nothing racist about that flag, look, a flag can't be racist. I agree with you. But the history does point to a opposition to the Civil Rights Act at the very least, which I don't think anyone really holds anymore.
Yeah, but I mean, there's history behind lots of things that are racist that no one is talking about or dealing with. You know the song "Amazing Grace."
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of racist history behind that if you want to go look it up. And guess who just sang it a little bit ago at funerals for 9 black people that died?
But isn't that just trivia, Mark?
No, it's not trivia. It's as much trivia as the racist history behind the Confederate, the battle flag of North Virginia.
Yeah, but
it's as much trivia as that. It's history, or it's trivia in some people's minds because it's not important. And you pick and choose. You go, oh, this is my battle. This is what I'm against. I'm going to be against that. Oh, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that because I don't have an issue with that. You know what I mean? That's what people do all the time.
Yeah, you're pointing to incompleteness or inconsistency in an ideological view.
Yeah.
But does that just negate... So anyone that advocates for anything, do they have to be 100% logically consistent all the time for you to allow their argument?
If their behavior or what they're propagating is only going to affect them and their lives, no, they don't. If it's going to affect everybody else, yes, they do.
So a lot of advocates for the Confederate flag right now are saying, well, you know, take that flag down because you don't like it.
I have no problem with taking down the flag from government buildings.
But that's a decision that affects other people.
But like you said, it was put up after a certain period of time when it was used basically by the KKK. Now,
plus it's a flag of a traitorous army, a traitor.
Well, then you know what? If you're going to do that, you need to take the French flags, British flags, Mexican flags, Spanish flags, any flag that is flown by a country that we ever went to war with, Japan, Italy, Germany. No. They cannot be on any government property in the U.S.
No, that's not treason.
We fought wars against them, but we
signed treaties. The war ended, and we signed treaties with them and everything. But they weren't traitors to America. They were opponents in wars, and now their governments are congenial to ours. So it's okay to fly. We wouldn't be flying those flags during that war.
Would you consider that a lot of the politicians, maybe the ones that just passed TPP and have passed other things, are a little traitorous to America? And if that's the case, then maybe we need to take the U.S. flag down.
Well, that's what I was getting at, is the people advocating for the Confederate flag were saying, take that flag down. They were mimicking the liberals and saying, take that flag down because you don't like it. Well, you should take down the Stars and Stripes, too, because that has racist history like slavery.
Yeah.
But I think that's dumb.
I mean,
because that flag represents the country that did have slavery, but then overthrew it.
This is the problem with symbols.
Well, you can't have a problem with symbols.
Yes,
Mark.
No, you can have a problem with symbols.
I don't have a problem with air.
I don't have a problem with symbols, but I have a problem with the power that people give to symbols and then say, this means this, and this I'm going to fly proudly and blah, blah, blah.
Well, it does to a lot of people, though. I mean, some people are above that or whatever, and they don't get affected by symbols, but Imagine, I mean, we're sitting here as three white guys in Arizona talking about this. Imagine
Kanye West has taken the battle flag of North Virginia and put it on all of his merchandise.
Kanye West has done a lot of things. Here's my point. All right, you're just a young black child growing up in Georgia, South Carolina, wherever. You're growing up in South Carolina. You're born on a street named after a Confederate general.
Right.
You walk by the Capitol building of your state government and you see the Confederate flag flying. You go to a high school named after a Confederate general. How do you not perceive that this systematic racism, which people want to pretend doesn't exist anymore, but to me, how could you grow up as a black kid seeing all of this that still exists out there and not think that you're still being subjected to that systematic racism? I mean, you could be a black kid who goes to General Robert E. Lee High School. That is a man who led an army with the sole intention of defeating the army that was trying to liberate your ancestors, with the intent of keeping your ancestors enslaved. And you're going to a school named after that guy. You're driving down a road named after Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederate States, who wanted to keep your ancestors enslaved. You're seeing the Confederate flag, which is flying, which represents all of that racism, all of that history. And I mean, how could you possibly think that that doesn't affect your outlook on your own country, a country where you're supposed to be an equal, where you're supposed to be free, and yet you still have to look at that every single day, and you have to be a part of that. You know, and it even bothered me. You know, Fort Stewart was not named after a Confederate general; it was named after a Revolutionary general. But Fort Benning was named after a Confederate general. Imagine being a black soldier. You're fighting for your country. You're going to war for your country. You're risking your life for your country, and yet you're stationed at a base named for a guy who would not allow you in his army, for a guy who would, if he had his way, you would still be enslaved.
Yeah,
and you're telling me that that's not offensive, that doesn't mess with your mind? It has to. Jefferson
Davis, man, he had all black Union soldiers that were captured were executed. He passed a law that they all were to be executed. And you never executed captured soldiers. No. I mean,
well, what was it in the 50s or the 60s? The Tuskegee Airmen. You know, that was black soldiers that were actually not traitors, and no opposing side was doing something to them, but the side that they were actually doing service for decided that, oh, you know what, we're going to do some experiments on you.
What happened with that?
Tuskegee Airmen, they inoculated them with the polio virus or
Black Army. They were Black Army soldiers.
Yes, they're Black Airmen.
Air Force.
Yes.
Okay.
And the U.S. government, without telling them, yes,
they gave them inoculations to
not inoculation. Well, they gave them the virus.
No. That wasn't the Tuskegee Airmen. That was the Tuskegee experiments that occurred in Tuskegee, Alabama. I want to say it was a different entity. It was definitely a horrible thing. I got to remember off the top of my head, and I may be misremembering some of these things, but essentially, the U.S. government did some things to some African Americans that essentially involved testing.
And they were servicemen. They were in the Air Force. Who they did it to?
No, I think the Tuskegee Airmen was a different.
That was like a heroic brigade of fighters.
No.
No.
They were.
All right. We'll find out later.
But anyways, I don't disagree at all with what Nick was saying about black people seeing the Confederate flag and knowing that the society that they're in, does have systemic racism and is against them, and they're going to have to fight harder. What my problem is with it, or my argument against taking that stuff down, or thinking that is your battle to take that stuff down, is you take the stuff down and the system still exists as it is. There's still going to be that systemic racism. There's still going to be all the same things that are in place, that were in place 100 years ago, that keep black people oppressed more than white people, blah, blah, blah. But now you have this idea that, we got rid of that flag. oh, the streets aren't named the things anymore.
But isn't it?
It's better. It's better.
It's a mile, but isn't it a milestone? Like it's.
I would rather get rid of the problem than the symptoms.
Well, and that's fine, and no one would argue against that. But I'm saying part of the process of mending those wounds that existed, and again, we're not just talking about Civil War. Like John said, this was these same symbols and these same historical figures were being used to go against the Civil Rights Acts, which were just 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah.
So we can definitely, I mean, I don't think we stop at that. Like, we still definitely need to deal with these systematic issues. But this is a part of that, and it's a part of moving past that. And I just don't understand.
If it's part of the process, I don't like it. Well, first off, like I said, I don't have a problem with them being taken down from government buildings. And if it's a part of the process, that's what I want it to be. I don't want us to do that and then think that we have solved the problem. Just like, I'm sorry, but the gay marriage thing, I'm all for it. I'm glad it happened. But people are acting like that's it. And now homosexuals have the same rights as anyone else. Guess what? There's discrimination laws in most of the fucking states in this country. And you can be fired or...
Right, but don't poo-poo it because the federal government can only do federal laws. So that's the best they can do is change the law on the federal level.
Right, and they could make a law at the federal level saying they could add homosexuals to the Civil Rights Act and say you cannot discriminate based on sexual identity,
right,
or gender identity, or blah blah blah, whatever you want to. They could add them. They don't. They didn't.
Yeah,
they haven't.
Right. But I don't know. It's like piecemeal improvements are not important, or it's just that you just don't think people should be so excited.
No, I want people to be excited, but I want people to be like, "This is awesome. It's rad. Now here's what we have to do more."
Yeah.
Instead of like, "Woo, rainbow! I'm a rainbow. Look at me. I'm a rainbow. Yeah."
Problem solved. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, while that was happening, and this always seems to be the case...
Well, I'd like to interject real quick.
Go ahead.
Tuskegee experiments, syphilis was what they were testing.
They gave them like a
The Tuskegee syphilis experiment, an infamous clinical study conducted between 1932 and 1972 by the U.S. Public Health Service to study the natural progression of untreated syphilis in rural African-American men in Alabama.
Oh my god!
So it was not connected to the Tuskegee Airmen.
So what's a Tuskegee Airmen?
They're just.
Did you look that up or not?
Yeah, that's Tuskegee Airmen. That's a completely different.
Were they black dudes?
Yeah, they were black dudes. They were black.
Just a
pilots.
Celebrated.
They were a segregated unit
of black.
They were a segregated unit who performed heroically.
Yeah,
but not
in World War II.
Yes, in World War II.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was really interested in this. Because I read an article about in the South the celebration of Confederate veterans, and nobody is looking or listening to me right now. It's like talking to my computer screen.
Mark's trying to prove me wrong.
I know.
No, I want to know what the Tuskegee Airmen was about that.
All right.
And you failed to kind of tell me what that was.
Here, I'll tell you right now. They were a segregated air unit in World War II. Here we go. Tuskegee Airmen, the popular name of a group of African-American pilots who fought in World War II. Formerly, they formed the 332nd Fighter Group and the 477th Bombardment Group of the United States Air Forces. They were the first African-American military aviators in the United States Armed Forces. During World War II, blacks in many U.S. states were still subject to the Jim Crow laws, and the American military was racially segregated. As with much of the federal government, they were subjected to racial discrimination both within and outside of the Army.
All right. Problem solved.
Yeah.
Back to the show. All right, Mark, you'll do what you want. I was wondering about how they celebrate Confederate veterans in the South, and they just do openly and happily. And then I started thinking about Germany, and do they have a Veterans Day? So I started wondering about that, and I looked it up, because if you have a Veterans Day in Germany, you're basically celebrating the dead or not dead Nazis. who fought in World War II, and the world has kind of passed judgment on them as being not so nice. So I was wondering if they have like a Veterans Day where they hold up like pictures of soldiers wearing the Nazi armband and stuff. And of course, my guess was that they didn't. And the truth was, until last year, there was no Veterans Day in Germany because of this very reason. Because they have to like disown that whole part of their history.
Yeah, but I mean, they had a military way before World War II. Yeah. So they can't celebrate those veterans? That's like saying that all Veterans Day in America is only for the people served in the Gulf War or served in, how far back do we go?
Yeah. But
because if we only go back as far as Vietnam, guess what? You might not want to wave that flag so fucking high.
Yeah, but I mean, see, Americans, we're still very proud of our Vietnam veterans.
Of course we are, even though because we haven't lost a war. Well, we have lost wars, but not in our minds.
Yeah, we haven't won a war since World War II.
Well, we didn't get occupied by another country after losing a war,
or ever. But it's interesting because I mean, you're right, Mark. Like they have a lot of other wars and stuff that they were involved in, and there's been 300,000 deployed German troops since World War II in conflicts started by us, basically where Germany helped us out. And but the shadow of World War II is so great that they didn't have a Veterans Day, and then they finally made one recently, but it's real low key because in Germany, according to this article, people. They don't really look up to soldiers at all because of this whole thing. Right. They've had to disown that whole history, so people look at soldiers as like dumb guys that couldn't get a job, so they join the German army.
Japan doesn't even have a military anymore.
Yeah, and I read an article that Japan was considering like starting one. Like, about there's a defense force. I mean, they have
they have
guns.
Have a defense force.
Yeah, but it's not a real.
But that was part of their treaty was that they lost their standing army, but they were allowed to keep essentially an imperial police force.
Yeah,
which is a paramilitary national defense organization.
And they were allowed to keep the emperor, the royal family at the time, right? But is that gone now, or do they still have? They don't have an emperor now.
I actually don't know. I think that might have died out over time. I know we allowed them to keep him because to remove him would have
just a shame would have
caused more. Well, I mean, he was a godlike figure. At that point, we just weakened him to the point where he had no real power. I mean, to remove what was essentially their god would have just
actually. I remember now. He came on the radio in the 40s, and it was the first I think to surrender. They had never heard his voice
before.
They had never probably seen him. Maybe most of them. So he came on the radio and said, "We're surrendering."
Right.
And then they were like, "Oh, okay." I guess after the 2 nukes.
Well, and that's basically why they don't have an emperor anymore. I mean, we allowed them to keep him if we wanted, but they're like they lost all faith in him.
They saw how the sausage was made.
He was their god.
Was it Hirohito?
Yeah, Hirohito. I think.
I mean, that's actually. I'm curious whatever happened with that because I don't think it continued into a dynasty.
No, I don't think there's no royal family there.
It might. That seems like one of those things though that. They might still have an obscure emperor that we don't know about.
Like
I don't want to say it doesn't.
Like Denmark has a king or something.
Most of Europe has kings and queens, and no one really.
The Spanish king is under a lot of pressure because all these articles. Because Spain's economy has been doing horribly, and a lot of articles came out about the royal family like traveling to Africa to. Do these exotic hunts and safaris and stuff, and it's all taxpayer money. All the royal families are supported by taxpayer money. So like Queen Elizabeth in England, that's taxpayer money that supports her, and they have a budget of like $2 million a year. It's like not much at all now. They keep up the palace like Buckingham.
Well, they have so much historical wealth, and they own so much land.
They own things, for sure.
Yeah, and then I mean, I think they charge money to go to the royal palace.
Certainly, tours. They generate
other money coming in besides just what taxpayers are giving.
But they really don't. They're not super rich. I mean, I don't really know how you calculate the wealth of the Queen, but
let's just say they're not one of the 1% anymore.
Well, they're 1%, but they're not the 1/10 of 1%. If to be in the world 1%, you have to make $35,000 a year.
No.
Yes, world. If you count Africa, baby, and all those Chinese peasants, if you make that's a fact. If you make $35,000 a year, you're in the worldwide 1%. But if in America, I don't know, you have to make several million to be in, or almost maybe $1 million a year, something like that, to be in the 1% here. But anyway, what else do we have?
Gay marriage is legal now.
Yes, gay marriage. I don't know what to say about that. I mean, it seems like a good step in the right direction. Civil rights for all different types of people.
Well, civil rights about getting married.
Right.
Not all your civil rights. You don't have them.
I was thinking about like the gay guy who, like, you know, before this week, right? Like, he lived in a state where it wasn't legal. And his partner was like, let's get married. And this guy's like, yeah, I want to.
Yeah, just keep
I really want to. I just, yeah.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh my God, it's legal. Let's go down to the courthouse. And the guy's like, yeah. You know, there's probably really big lines there today just because it was just made. Let's just hold it off for a week or two because we don't want to wait in those lines. Now he's got to like find a way to weasel out of the marriage.
well, that's I was reading, somebody was making a point about that, and they said that they felt that all the right-wing Republicans that are saying that this gay marriage is going to trivialize what marriage is all about,
right?
And what marriage stands for, and it's basically what marriage stands for is gay guys being able to have a ring on their finger and go, I'm not gay. Look, I'm not gay. No, I'm not gay.
But you can't say that anymore now,
right?
Because the ring doesn't mean that.
That's right. So Bachman,
yeah,
her husband. Oh,
the obviously gay man,
right?
Who's a crusader against gay people,
right? You might have have to find some other closet to go into.
It's just so weird because as a politician, your whole life is exposed, and like the whole country knows that Michelle Bachmann's husband is a homosexual man, and she doesn't know it, and he doesn't know it probably, but the rest of the country does because he crusades against gays all the time, but he's really effeminate.
Well, and they'll keep the lie going. Remember the congressman from Idaho, Larry Page. Larry Page, I think, is the Google guy.
Yeah,
Larry Craig. There we go. He was caught soliciting gay sex in an airport bathroom, and still to this day denies.
Yeah.
And it's like
I'm a homespun, corn-fed, blue-blooded,
just that
red blood
fear of like being labeled as a
well, that's
gay
like there was that
is,
one minister for like the super church in Colorado, Ted, whoever, that came out that he had been having gay sex with a bunch of hustlers and doing meth with them. And
well, even Eddie Murphy, man, like one of the greatest stand-up comics of all time, and I think it was Raw or Delirious, where he's just the whole first 15 minutes is all about faggots.
Yeah.
And it's just horribly mean.
They were not shy about that word.
It was the late 70s or the early 80s.
Yeah, it was the 80s.
And he was just... It was horrible. The things he said now would just not get away.
And then he got caught soliciting a transvestite in a park or bathroom or something.
Yeah. And it's like all the most outspoken people are... Well, I mean, I wrote a book about it. I call it... The concept I use, I called it the counterfeit. And it was that it's when you can't accept something about yourself, so you shut it off and you project the opposite persona to the public and to yourself. So it's not just a lie. You're not just lying about who you are. You're actually convinced as well. And so I think all of these are cases of the counterfeit.
Well, you're convinced, except for when you're engaging in those acts.
Even then, man.
You're still convinced?
Haven't you heard people be like, a blowjob isn't gay or something? It's not gay if you don't do this. Like they'll rationalize it.
It's not gay if you don't come.
Well, in jiu-jitsu, we say it's not gay if you don't make eye contact.
Oh.
That's our rule. Because everything we do is gay.
It's super gay.
And of course, as this gay marriage thing was happening, as always is the case, Obama and Biden and their whole group is being lauded as these great civil rights people, and the TPP, Fast Track Authority, passes Congress. Once again, the TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It's a trade deal between 12 countries, making up 40% of the world's economy. Much like NAFTA and all the other trade deals that hurt American workers, this deal will make it easier for American companies to outsource their jobs to tiny little countries where they can pay slave wages. And it will also give the power it will give power to corporations to sue national governments if those governments pass laws which hurt the projected profits of that corporation. So if I'm Coca-Cola and I'm operating in Italy, and Italy is part of the TPP, and Italy passes a law against sugary beverages, let's say, and that hurts my projected profits in Italy as Coca-Cola, I can now, as the Coca-Cola CEO, sue the government of Italy under this trade deal and sue them for lost revenues.
Well, so to your first point, you said it will make it easier to outsource and all that. Not necessarily. It could, in theory, keep jobs in the United States.
Yeah.
We don't know what terms this trade deal is going to adopt.
And why don't we know, Nick?
Well, and that's
because it's completely
because it's
confidential,
classified.
We can't see it.
But here's what I'm saying. Before
WikiLeaks released it, so we can see it. So go ahead.
Well, but what for people that don't understand what it is, what it could do, because right now jobs are being exported to these Asiatic countries because we can pay them
less
slave labor.
Right.
They don't have to worry about environmental concerns. But if
we could
this
do the
law
same
brings
thing
that up,
if we could do the same thing in this country, if we could pay people less and without environmental concerns, then I agree with you completely that yes, we'd probably keep those jobs in this country.
No, but that's not
what libertarians want.
That's not what I'm
Mark.
saying. That's not what I'm saying.
They
I'm
want
not
that minimum wage.
I'm not
gone.
saying that we are going to lower our wages. But what I'm saying is if we can get these other countries to raise their wages, and if we can get these other countries to take the environmental aspect of it seriously, where they can't just pollute and they actually have to spend some money building an infrastructure that's not going to destroy the earth, and now all of a sudden everyone's playing on that level playing field, now all of a sudden we can start bringing jobs back because it's no longer cheaper to send the jobs over there.
It's true.
So there could be,
in theory, actually it will help.
Except for I don't see the corporations fighting for either of those two things. I don't see corporations who are now basically the ones in charge saying we need to raise salaries in the rest of the world to be in
right. But the TPP is a
US,
government
and
deal.
I don't see them saying we need to enforce the environmental laws more. And maybe make some new ones.
This is the thing, though.
The
TPP carries provisions that
but do you think they're going to?
Well, so right now they're competing. Let's say you're an American country and you're competing against a Chinese country. You're an American company competing against a Chinese company who makes the same product as you, only they can pay slave labor to their workers, and they can import with limited tariff, and they can operate with limited environmental concerns, and you're over here in America and you have to abide by all that. You would support this because now that Chinese company has to operate at the same level that you're operating. They have to play by the same rules as you, and they can no longer.
Nick, you make a good point because I'm
just saying this isn't worth overreacting about yet. Once
it's passed, we're fucked. That's the thing, and we're not allowed to look at it. So that's why everyone should be really sketchy about it because it's about to pass. I mean, now that fast track is through, that means that it's only an up and down vote. Once this trade deal goes to a vote in our Congress, it's yes or no. They can't say but take this out because that's horrible for everything, or take this out because corporations shouldn't be able to sue the government. So now fast track is through, which means when this comes up, it's just yes or no, and it's considered a statistical certainty that it will pass.
Well, the suing of the government point that you brought up next, you used Italy as an example. You couldn't sue Italy because Italy's not a part of this trade agreement.
Right.
What this is saying is that you could sue other countries as part of this trade agreement for breaking the trade agreement, which would then cost you would cost you profits.
The trade agreement to pass legislation that happens to hurt any weird legislation could happen to affect the profits of some company, some American company, right? I mean, that's not part of the agreement.
I think the suing of another country comes if you break the agreement in the passing of legislation. Then costs someone money.
That's kind of a weird. I don't know how to, but what it is you can sue a national government if they pass legislation that hurts your projected profits. I don't believe it's if they break the rules of the agreement. But anyway,
well, that is the rules of the agreement, because the agreement is
don't hurt the profits.
If you hurt our profits, we get to fucking sue you. So if you pass a law saying that you're hurting our profits, then we get to sue you.
Yeah,
I'd have to look into it more, but
well, the fact that it's secret makes it really hard to look into. Except that WikiLeaks did publish it.
How do we know that much about it then? That it involves that clause.
Well, some senators have said it, because senators are allowed to look at it.
You can look at it
in a room.
It's in a room that you can go into by yourself. Look at it without any cameras, or able
no
to reproduce
aides can
it.
go with you.
And you can read it yourself, and then But first off, I just want to go back to the gay marriage thing real quick, because Obama and Clinton, Obama, current president, Democratic president, Clinton, one of the supposedly strong Democratic candidates.
Well, by far the leader.
They both were against gay marriage. Let's just remember that.
Obama was?
Obama was as far back as
2004?
No, 2008, when he was running for president in the first thing, he was against it. I think maybe he was even against it after that. I know Clinton was against it up until 2012.
Yeah.
So, like, what happened? What happened between then and now? Like, were they really against it? Did they really have a problem morally with it?
Reading the polls, or reading public opinion polls.
And then
Bernie Sanders has been, like everything else, consistent on this, that he's for it since a long time ago, since way before any of those two.
Right. And that just, for me, just proves more of their character and who they are. And that's my problem with them as well.
It's my problem with Hillary, man. She's just a flip-floppy. On the TPP, for example, her opinion has been just extremely vague. She has definitely supported it in the past, and then now, as people like Bernie, her opponent for the Democratic nomination, Bernie Sanders, are coming out saying this is horrible, don't do this. She's just hanging back. She's just hanging back.
Well, her husband is the one who passed NAFTA, so
exactly.
TPP is just like a
But
supersized
here's the
version.
thing, though, Nick, you made
NAFTA
a good
destroyed.
It hasn't destroyed, but it's hurt. Everyone
It's hurt.
agrees.
Yep.
Everyone
NAFTA
agrees that it was a failure.
NAFTA has definitely
From what I
hurt
heard.
U.S. economy.
Yeah, that's what. And Nick, you made a good point, because it's absolutely right that the stipulations in the TPP will probably, if enforced, would help the U.S. economy. They would be a good thing. It's a good thing on paper. The fact is, though, that enforcing international regulations is an incredibly tedious and difficult process that doesn't get done. So NAFTA, for example, is just all the stipulations that would have made it a great deal were not enforced. So Elizabeth Warren, for example, the senator, has said, what reason do we have to believe that the stipulations protecting American workers in this deal will be enforced? And, Obama just says, well, they will be. I promise. So that's where it stands.
Well, but again, if you don't even make the effort, if you don't even try to build the framework.
Well, and Obama's whole point is that China is all about fear of China. It's that China's coming up, China's going to control the world economy, so we have to, what Obama said is, we have to make the rules now before they make the rules. That was this big selling point on this deal. And that makes sense to me. And
I agree with that. And I think a problem is we still have this American exceptionalism idea where it's like, well, fuck it, we don't need Asia. But no, that's not the way that the global economy works anymore.
No.
We need partnerships with all of these people, and we need to start working towards stuff. And the TPP isn't going to be perfect. I'm not even trying to say that. It's still going to have flaws in it, but to just completely ignore it and do nothing and just continue to operate at the status quo, which clearly isn't working. I mean, you're telling me right now that we're better off letting Asia regulate itself, that we're not rapidly losing jobs as it is?
Well, I don't know if we're rapidly losing jobs. We've gained jobs since Obama came into office. I'm talking big picture. Big picture. We're losing manufacturing jobs to Asia left and right. Yeah.
I mean, this is an attempt to start working towards balancing that out, and I just think it's so knee jerk to just automatically assume that it's going to destroy our economy.
You make a good point.
Well,
however,
I think it's knee-jerk, but I think it's appropriately knee-jerk because
of the secrecy.
Of nothing else than the secrecy. Yes, it's like if you want me to look at something and then judge its value after I look at it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you want to give me a bunch of bullshit in a fucking wrapped up in a bag and say, "Oh, don't open this until Christmas," but I promise you it's going to be great. I promise you, you're going to love it.
Yeah, because right now this fast track, everything about it stinks of. I want to get this done before the American people ever even find out about it. We didn't find out about it en masse until the last second, until fast track was up for a vote, and then people like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren came out and were like, hey, there's this thing called the TPP, and so people like me get on their podcast and talk about it, and most people have never heard of it, so that's the big problem that I have with it too. I agree with Mark, is that you got to have any, because the American people have no say in this.
Have any of the other countries ratified or accepted this trade agreement yet?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I'd have to look into it more.
I mean,
my theory on it is this: what if this is what they're agreeing on is our initial negotiation for this trade agreement? That's what they're voting on right now, and by making it public,
the
you're making our
of the
negotiating
agreement
stance public.
Well, there's reasons for it to be classified. There's good reasons for it to be classified, but they're not good enough to me, because the reasons are like so that if other countries can see it, they'll make like countries that aren't in the agreement, if they can see the TPP and read it, they'll just make agreements that counteract it.
Undercut
it's important for it to be classified. I understand that, but it's just all Obama saying trust me, and I just can't do that anymore.
I guess I just don't have this innate fear of government, I guess, that other people do.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I don't assume the worst, I guess.
I don't assume
maybe
conspiracy.
That's a flaw. I don't assume that it's classified because of conspiracy.
I believe that he thinks it's a good thing. And I don't know.
But why does he think it's a good thing? Does he think it's a good thing because he actually morally believes in it and thinks that it's actually going to do something for America?
The economy,
or does he believe that it's a good thing because his handlers have told him and money's being funneled into his campaign or into his party?
Well, he doesn't have
or into whatever.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean? His war chest or his retirement fund or just the Democratic Party or...
I don't know which one it is, man. Did you guys listen to the interview with Mark Maron?
No. I mean, I listened to some of it, but not...
It's crazy, man. Like, I don't remember...
I thought it was retarded that the media was jumping on his ass for saying the N-word.
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't think too many people jumped
I don't know.
on him,
that was most of what I read about it.
I think they were just remarking that he said it for the most part. I didn't see a lot of negative.
Oh, really?
Like he shouldn't have.
Everyone that I like.
Look, black people are allowed to say it.
No, I know, but like Amy Goodman on
what was the context?
She was like, "Well, what do you think about him saying that?"
Okay, well, she's just asking.
I haven't listened to it yet. I have it on my phone to listen to. But what was the context?
It's a really good interview. Well,
he was talking about racism and basically how racism. We like to think that racism is gone from this country, but racism being gone isn't as simple as not saying the N-word
in public.
Right, which is what we talked about earlier. Right, which is removing the Confederate flag.
He made a good point. Right. He made a good point, and he kind of went against PC culture by saying it.
Yeah,
and which I like. And that was, he was on that pod, and Mark Maron really loosened him up, and they had an hour-long interview. Mark Maron is a really good interviewer, and his podcast is great. I don't think he's funny. That's his whole career is stand-up comedy. I've never laughed at a joke.
He's a terrible stand-up
Never laughed at a
joke.
He's a terrible comic. But he's like whined his way into fame. Like because he's been a comedian for 30 years, so he's just kind of like he's always been like, why not me? Why not me? And then now they're just like, okay, you give him a show, give him his whole show.
But it's just podcasts. Like he got famous.
No, he has a show.
He has a show on.
But his show is about his podcast.
Oh, is it?
His show is basically he's this guy, and yes, he's a comedian, but basically he's this guy who has a podcast.
So he's just completely copying Louis.
Yeah,
It's like a pseudo-true biography.
Yes.
I really love that show, Louis, and I think Louis is an incredible stand-up comic, and I agree with the rest of the world that he's number one right now. Oh, I'm seeing Bill Burr tonight at the casino. Holy crap.
Is that tonight?
I cannot wait. Have you seen him yet?
You should
I
ask.
haven't seen him in
So
concert.
funny. So funny.
Ask him about pit bulls.
Yeah, he has one. He has a pit bull.
No, yeah, I know.
Also on
there was a
Breaking
bit that
Bad.
he did that was pretty funny.
I was so happy when I saw him on Breaking Bad.
I know, that was crazy.
Bill Burr was? Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah,
was
he was
Huell's partner.
Yeah, he was like
Yeah,
the henchman for
right.
The
Saul.
henchman. They gave him the greatest little role.
So is he on the?
He's not on.
What about Sal?
Not yet. You would
No.
assume at some point he may
He
make
probably,
an appearance.
maybe. He won't
make
say
me
now.
happy.
It's all, it's all under the table until it happens. He's got a show coming out, though, an animated cartoon about his childhood. It's going to come out in a few months, December, I think. It's going to be probably really funny. Nick, when I mentioned Bernie Sanders and I said I could convince the world to vote for him in 2 sentences, one of those sentences was, he's never run a negative attack ad in his life, a political attack ad. He's never run that black and white picture of Hillary Clinton with her looking old and say, Hillary voted for this. But Bernie's like this. He's never done one ever.
And I believe I told you I didn't care.
You said, that's not important.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of grill you about that because, come on, man, it is important. That's one of the signs of the breakdown of politics.
No, one of the signs of the breakdown of politics
is politics.
That we're, politics in general, but that we're advertising on TV.
Yeah.
Like it's a product.
Hey,
like a candidate
okay.
is a product.
Yes.
Like I'm Nick Richardson. I'm running for president. This is why you should vote for me in a 30-second time frame.
There you go then. Because that's his other main platform is campaign finance reform and getting rid of
that.
corporate
And I told you I
donations.
supported that.
Yeah.
We talked about that last time. That to me is huge. I think it's ridiculous that we
you know how
advertise
hard it
political
is?
candidates like they're a product to be bought.
I know, but
And
how,
a part
how
of that
else do
is-
you spread the knowledge of who your candidates are?
Well, let me just say one thing real quick.
Well, how did they do it before
I was thinking
the
about
TV? We did it for 200 years.
I'll tell you.
I was
how.
thinking about your negative campaign, thinking about. So if Hillary really wanted to screw him, what she should do is run a fucking ad, like now, that is negative against her and make it look like he did it. Like Bernie for president.
Yeah, then it should
You know,
be paid
like,
for by Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. No, that'd be at the very bottom. But still.
Well, that's
be,
funny. That's a bit of trivia, Nick. Is that how did they do it before TV? And do you ever hear? Have you ever heard the phrase "get the ball rolling"?
Yeah.
Get the ball rolling. So that phrase comes from the 1700s when political candidates would go from town to town, and
Whistle
advertise.
stops.
And whistle stops. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. And what they did is they had a ball, and it was made out of like paper mache or something like that, cloth or scraps of crap. And they would roll the ball, reportedly, from one town down the street to the next, and it would get bigger when they went to that town. People would put stuff on that ball. It was like a giant rubber band ball, and they would roll this thing through each county to show each town that the town before them had supported this guy, and that there was enthusiasm was building, and the ball would get bigger.
That's interesting. I'd never heard that
the
before.
ball rolling. Yeah.
I think my biggest problem is that I would get rid of any sort of television or radio commercials, and I would get rid of these signs that you're allowed to just put on the side of the road. And every street corner has 800 signs. Because
let's start
to me,
with the more important thing of getting corporate donations out of elections via Citizens United, which determined that corporations were people.
Okay, we can talk about that too. But here's why I'm against those two things.
Yeah.
Because it allows you to vote for a president, to vote for a congressman, to vote for an elected official without actually knowing anything about them, without looking into it at all. It essentially allows you to be lazy about your elected government. So I throw a sign on the corner that says Nick Richardson for president, and you drive by it every day, and mine is the most brightly colored, and I got a flag in the back and a bald eagle and all that shit, and you go, oh, okay, I guess I'll vote for him. You don't know anything about me from that sign. That sign didn't tell you anything about what I stand for, anything about my platform. It's just name recognition.
But the question,
and it's the same thing with TV advertisements. It's nothing more than, let me tell you in 30 seconds why you should vote for me over that guy.
Do you think people get to the polls?
30 seconds.
Do you think people get to the polls and there's the two switches, and they have literally zero knowledge about either candidate, but they remember the one name, and so they flick it to that just for name recognition?
For like state representatives, 100%. Yeah. I assure you that happens a lot.
I've done it.
People go,
but I read because they give you the
vote
ballot,
based on party.
And I
vote based on
no.
People do.
I never vote for Republicans, but
that's what I'm saying.
I read each guy's thing or woman's thing, and they give you a little blurb, and they mail you a thing with the candidate's stance. Right. And the yes or no, a yes on this proposition will mean such and such. And so I read each one, and then I fill in the bubble.
Right, but if I told you that didn't exist, and I told you that these signs and these advertisements, and I said, John, you need to elect your state representative, and
voting
and we're not going to let you cheat.
Would go down even
more. And I'm not sure it's a horror because that's uninformed voting that's going down. You wouldn't spend 10 minutes. You wouldn't spend 10 minutes online looking up Bob Smith versus Joe Davis and find out which one and then you go, oh hey, this Bob Smith's kind of a bad guy.
Most people spend 15 seconds and go, oh, this guy's a Democrat. I'm a Democrat.
And that's what it is.
Oh, this guy's a Republican.
I would support
I will say
not putting parties on the ballot. If you don't put that little D or that little R next to that guy's name,
it's interesting.
Because now you're just getting that blanket ticket voting where you're going, I'm going to vote for every single guy with a D next to his name.
Because I'm fighting for what's right.
Yeah, exactly. But you don't know what those people stand for. Take 5 minutes and Google their name, look them up a little bit,
example,
find
Hillary
out what
Clinton
they've done.
Doesn't stand for any of the things that she stands for.
Well, right. And even if you do go do research and find out what they supposedly stand for because of what they said, that doesn't mean that's what they stand for.
But look, when we started this country, the founding fathers were well-educated, wealthy men who were part of the Enlightenment and were beautiful writers and scholarly people. And they were trying to write the rules for this country. And basically it was you could only vote if you were a land-owning white male. So that was a small percentage of the population. It was like 20% or something, maybe less. But, their whole point was you can't just have everyone, all the drunken tavern people voting, forget the fact that blacks and women couldn't vote. Like, that was obviously misguided. But this idea that only the educated can vote is kind of tantalizing in a way, right? And whole Joe Rogan advocates internet voting, online, so everyone can do it, so you'll get more participation. And when Nietzsche was writing, they were opening the schools to the lower classes in Germany, and he was writing, this is going to be the death of us. If you teach everyone to read, it's going to pull down the standard of all education, the standard of scholarship. And it kind of has.
I will say this,
the 20th century is pulled everything down. You don't have these.
That everyone should have the right to vote.
Okay.
There should be no barrier to voting at all. The internet thing sounds great in theory, but there's a lot of people out there, my grandma doesn't know how to use the internet. Was she going to get...
Well, yeah, but she can still go to the poll.
Right.
Well,
okay. But I'll say this, though. Okay, so there should be no barrier to voting. But we should not pander to the group of people who don't care enough to take 10 minutes to look up who they're going to vote for.
And so you're saying...
And we pander to them by putting these street signs on the corner because it's literally, hey, dummy, look at my name. Remember my name. When you go to the poll, you're going to go, oh, I recognize that name. I saw it every day when I was driving home. It had an American flag and a M4 and an eagle. And, this guy must be great. You don't know anything about that guy, and you're about to vote him into office. We're pandering to the people who don't care.
Yeah.
And that's what I have a problem with.
No, we're not pandering to the people who don't care. We're pandering to the people who think they know what they're voting for.
Well, they're going to take the time to vote.
Because the majority of people, the majority of Americans do not vote. And they're people who don't care. And they drive by those signs all the fucking time. And they're like, you know what? all those fuckheads are retarded. I'm not going to vote for any of them.
Right.
But my thing is this. If you walked in, if you did no research on an election, and you walked in to vote for a state representative, so not a household name like Hillary Clinton versus Joe, but a state representative, and there was no D and no R next to the name, and there were no street signs on the corner, and there were no advertisements on television, would you vote if you just saw Bob Smith versus Joe Davis? Or would you go, I don't really know either one of those guys. I never took the time. Because by putting a D or an R, 50% of the people are going to vote for the R. They're voting for the letter next to the name. They're not voting for the candidate.
Right.
So that way, if you know you're not going to get that cheat sheet when you get in the booth, you're going to take a couple minutes to Google those guys and go, hey, this guy has no experience whatsoever. This guy, I can see he was a city councilman. He was a mayor. Okay, I like some of his positions. This other guy, he worked for a corporation. I'm not really a big fan of his. Okay, now I know who I'm going to vote for. Now you know what you're getting into.
But then are you like banning websites that just describe the candidate and say he's great on everything? Like, are you going to ban?
I mean, if someone doesn't know how to Google effectively, then that's on them. I mean, we can't help that. If you're just going to click on on his website and read what he stands for. But I'm saying there's ways to look into these people that goes above and beyond what they're telling you about themselves.
And by the way, Bernie Sanders is not a Democrat. He's a registered independent. He's running for the Democratic nomination because that's the only way to get his name on the ballot without some $1 billion Ross Perot-style campaign.
And you should agree with my position, because if everybody in the country took 15 minutes to Google Hillary's voting record, Hillary's stance on things in the past versus Bernie Sanders,
sources,
how much would that switch? But the problem is people are too lazy for that. So they go, well, I recognize Hillary Clinton's name. I think I like her. I don't know. I don't have any reason not to like her. I don't know this Bernie Sanders guy, so I'm going to vote for Hillary.
Yeah, but then under your thing, if Bernie wasn't allowed to spend money getting his name out there, once the time came to vote, most of the people would tick for Hillary because they know her name. They don't even know who this other guy on the list is.
He wouldn't have to spend the money to get his name out there through advertisements. He would go to a city and he would campaign like they used to do. They get
You can't get to the whole American public that way, though.
Absolutely. The election season's a year and a half long. The election isn't until next November.
That's all they do is like travel around.
Yeah, he would have no problem going to all of the cities that he thinks would support him and getting his message out there, getting his names out there, and then let the people do the campaigning. You know what I mean? Let, like John Berger, who gets on this podcast every week and tells you about Bernie Sanders, that word of mouth that spreads, and then people go, oh, I like John, and John seems to like this Bernie Sanders guy. Maybe I should look up Bernie Sanders a little bit.
And that's kind of how Obama...
And that's how you build this up. And then you're electing candidates that you know things about, candidates that you actually support, as opposed to the just, I guess I'll vote for Hillary because she's the only one I've heard of, and she's got a D next to her name, and,
it sounds like a pretty good idea.
Of course, it'll never happen. That's why it's ridiculous.
No, but Bernie's, if he did become president, the first thing he would do is nominate Supreme Court justices who were in favor of repealing Citizens United. That's
and how much money, they wouldn't be spending this money on television. So that money's not going to these media conglomerates where we're just sending our money to these corporations so then they can advertise to us which candidate we should elect.
Right. And Hillary is projected to raise $2.5 billion, a record amount for an election. And Bernie is trying to get to $50 million so that he can win in Iowa and New Hampshire. He's doing really well in the polls in New Hampshire. I think he'll probably win that state, honestly.
Well, he's from Vermont,
He's from Vermont, yeah. Mayor of Burlington, House of Representatives, and then Senator for Vermont.
But, and this is me just grumbling, whatever, but... So no matter who the politician is, even Bernie Sanders, he's going to raise $50 million that he's going to spend to become president. How much good could he do in the world if he just took that fucking $50 million and used it towards doing good?
Well, how much money?
But they wouldn't give it to him.
It's the people who give it to him.
These
corporations and then the private citizens.
Well, no, he doesn't take any donations from corporations. All of his donations are from private citizens and workers' unions. But... if he was just raising it to give it to charity, people wouldn't give it to him, Mark. That's the answer to your question.
No, it's not the answer to my question, because I'm saying he acts like he's going to be run for president, gets the $50 million, and just goes, you know what? I don't want to be president. I got this money now that I'm going to spend on doing good in the country. And that's my point, is that no matter who the politician is or what the party they're running for or whatever, it's a fucking ego trip. It's all about fucking you becoming something, you.
So essentially, let's just get down to
it's
the bottom of it.
People who want to be president, people who want to be president are fucking these power hungry people.
Usually, yes, but to say that they all are, it means that you.
I think they all are.
So you completely disown the political process of democracy.
Yes.
So do you have an alternative? Dare I ask, to what's it called? Democratic, Republican. What is our system called? Representative democracy.
Yeah, representative.
Well, but our system is actually an oligarchy. But yeah.
Wow.
No, it's been proven that.
Yeah, I did see there was like a
Harvard,
study,
Yale, Princeton. Yeah. They've all come out and said that our
well, it's never been more visible than now with a Bush and a Clinton. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But the thing is that, look, here's some more polls. The party base for each party is 30% of the public. So 30% of the voting public will vote for a Democrat no matter who the candidate is once it comes time for the presidential election. 30% of the voting population will also vote for the Republican no matter who it is. But that leaves 40%, which is a big enough chunk to beat either of those parties. But as the election season goes on, that 40% gets divided up between the two parties through scare ads and Fox News and MSNBC saying, if you don't vote for Hillary, whom you hate, Bush will be president, and that's even worse. And everyone falls for it every time. And then 97% of the voting population votes for a Republican or a Democrat every single time.
You know how, like in Switzerland and Israel, you have to serve in the military for like 2 years after you become 18 or whatever? I think the same should be done here in America, but first you should serve in some sort of service. It doesn't have to be military. It could be, helping build roads.
Yeah. I serve with a lot of idiots in the military. You don't want most of those guys to be president.
No. But what I'm saying is, so you do that, and then also I think there should be some sort of political process where everybody has to serve in some sort of office. Now, I don't know how you would come up with who would be the president.
Right.
Maybe it'd be some sort of like in England, how they have out of
you
that
don't
body.
Vote for the prime minister, you vote for the party, and then they have a representative.
But what I'm saying is I don't think there should be parties. I think just you get like a jury duty. You get summoned up and you're like, okay, well you're going to be in House of Representatives. You're going to be in this local city council. You're going to be in this. You're going to be in that. Blah blah blah, whatever. Or maybe you just get assigned.
Maybe on the state level.
Assigned to being just a politician for that year or that term, and then once you all get into this fucking room, then you hash it out amongst yourselves and find out, okay, well you're better about this, you're better about that, you're smarter, so you should go do that.
Well,
but I think that is a way more
it's
interesting idea, better idea
it is
than
a good idea.
What we're doing right now.
It has some precedent in history. Italy, and I think like the 14 or 1500s was doing something very much like that, where the president would do 1 year, I believe, terms, and then they would just cycle through, and all the representatives were just working men and women, not women, but they were working men who would just cycle through as like a jury duty selection process, a lottery basically, where people get called up.
What accountability do you have to the people then? If they never elected you in the first place, and you don't have to worry about getting reelected,
and you're just an extremist,
then you just do whatever the fuck you want because you don't have to serve anybody.
Yeah. No, you have to go back to your neighborhood.
Well, that's true.
You're not going to be getting paid the amount of money that these politicians get paid.
I think
you're not going to be able to go to a gated community
that might work
afterwards. You're not going to have Secret Service agents fucking following your ass around.
That might work on the state level. On the state level,
fuck your people over.
That might work on the state level, but I don't think on the national level that would work. And
it wouldn't even work on the state level. You want your state governor to just be randomly selected. You don't want to have any say in who your state governor is, or you don't want them to be accountable to you because they want to get reelected.
You think you have a say in who they are right now?
Yeah, you can vote.
You have a vote.
Yeah, and how much does that work? How good is that? When people are saying that, you got to vote for the lesser of two evils. You can't vote for that person; they're not going to win. Oh yeah, you can't.
But those are all just
when they're redistricting, fucking, all kinds of stuff to divide votes up. I mean, seriously, if it's an oligarchy, how much is your vote fucking counting?
You can address those issues without just completely imploding the representative democracy that our country's built on.
Right.
I mean,
because I think, I don't know, like if Bernie Sanders got elected, I think he would keep most of his campaign promises, and I think he would be a lame duck. I think both parties would oppose him, and he wouldn't be able to pass anything, but I like that. That's what I want to happen. I want to have a one-term president, like a Jimmy Carter, and which will just give way to a Reagan. Now that I'm thinking about it,
he wasn't exactly one term by choice either.
Well, that's one thing though. In the past, a lot of presidents would campaign when they were trying to portray themselves as opposed to the horrible.
They wouldn't seek re-election.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, again, that sounds great. It sounds great to say, "Hey, you can only serve one term."
No, it's It's a guy that proclaims,
But I'm saying
I'm only going to serve one term.
A lot of people support that. A lot of people say, only one term for politicians. No, because the only thing that's going to keep them to their promises is that you need to elect them again. They need to get reelected. Otherwise, I'd say, "Hey, John, all right, so we're in a system where I can only serve one term as the representative." I say, "Hey, John, you should vote for me because I'm going to do all this stuff." And you go, "Okay, that sounds great," and you vote for me. And then I go, "Well, I'm not going to stick to any of that. Why should I? I can't get elected again, so what does it matter?" As opposed to if I want to keep getting elected, I got to keep doing what the people who elect me want me to do.
It's a good point. But you think that if a Sanders campaigned on the platform of "I will only serve one term voluntarily, I will not run for re-election," you think that would actually cause distrust among the public? Because they would say, well, he has no reason to do what he said. Because my whole thing is he should do that like they used to do in the 1800s. They said, I'm only serving one term, voluntarily.
Well, just first of all, that whole logic is faulty, because what you're saying then is politicians fulfill their campaign promises because they have to get reelected.
Because they want to get reelected.
Well, because they want to.
He's saying
how many politicians actually fulfill their campaign promises?
Well, they usually do a few.
Yeah.
And
how many of that is a few? A few out of what? 25?
But the Republican Congress has opposed Obama, Mark. He hasn't been able to do everything that he promised.
But my point is, the majority of them do not fulfill their campaign promises.
But not fulfilling is different from turning away and lying.
He's actually turned away and lied about stuff.
Yes, a couple things. But most things that he hasn't fulfilled are because he's been opposed by a Republican House and Senate.
No, a lot of what he said he was going to do, he fucking failed to do and actually increased. He made what Bush had done before him even worse.
Like transparency and whistleblowers is a great example of something he could have
drug laws. He increased the drug laws.
I don't ever remember him campaigning on.
No, he never campaigned on legalization, and he did order the DEA to stop the raids, which they did. So he did.
He told them to stop the raids after states started fighting him, and states started legalizing it themselves.
Yeah, but he did do it
after he was forced to. Because he could. Yes, he was, because he could have fought it like Clinton, and he could have made them actually raid the states.
Yeah. But he fulfilled his promise by not raiding the states.
No, he was forced to, because the state said, "Fuck you, we're going to legalize this stuff, so we can fight now. We can have a fight. We can have like a civil war."
No.
Yes.
What are you talking about? He could have opposed the states. You just said that.
Right. He could have opposed the states and end up having like a civil war.
So then it wouldn't be a civil war. It'd be a legal
Well,
battle.
just to prove my point, he got fewer votes in 2012 than he did in 2008, right?
Because
a lot of people
a
lot of people, because of those things that he said he was going to do and didn't do. Now, he wasn't egregious enough that everyone stopped voting for him.
Because he did wind down the two wars, like he said.
But look at the first George Bush. Read my lips. I will not raise taxes. Then he raised taxes, so then people didn't vote for him again. That is one thing that will absolutely keep you accountable, is if you want to be reelected, you have to maintain accountability to the people. And if we take away that incentive, and if we say no matter what happens, good or bad, you're doing one term, then what motivation do they have?
Okay, fine. You're right. But
who says...
I'm not saying change the law for one term. I'm saying that Bernie should run on a voluntary
I will agree with that. Voluntary one term is better.
Because people don't remember that in history. You have to read history to know that politicians used to do that, and it's been 100 years since anyone has said the promise to only run for one term. And so if he did that, I think people would be like, oh, that's cool. I haven't heard that ever in my life, that this politician is only going to serve one term. They promise to, and even if you really like him after those 4 years, then you can vote for his vice president or whoever he endorses, And I think people would really dig that.
But how much of that, I mean, we're already talking about a president that would probably be the most opposed in history. How much of that would just
no connections in the Democratic
opposition?
Party?
Well, also, if you're an opposing congressman, you go, well, I just got to wait this guy out for 4 years.
Yep.
Then I got a new guy that I can
block him for 4 years. Yeah.
Which is a lot easier than if you think he's.
I just kind of thought that's a good point. I just kind of thought it would mobilize the spirit of the people to back this guy. There was another recent poll that said 47% of Americans polled would vote for a socialist if he or she were qualified and a good candidate. So that's interesting because that's the big bad word about Bernie Sanders is that he's a self-described European-style socialist. And that's just the worst thing you could call someone on Fox News is socialist. I mean, that's what they've been calling Obama from the start. But apparently people don't really mind that much.
I mean, again...
It's not going to help them.
Does no one know what that word means? That's the problem.
Because half of what we do is socialist already. Taxes and government doing things is socialism.
Yeah, and then the other half of it, what is he going to do? Just remove all major corporations from the country?
No, he's a European-style socialist. It's capitalism plus...
Oh, European-style socialist.
Yeah, European-style socialist.
Because you said that people would vote for just a socialist.
Well, that's what they said. They said they would vote for a socialist candidate if he or she were qualified and agreed with their views. In other words, the word wasn't a blockage for 47% of those polled. All right. I'm not going to do my theory. I have a theory about liberals and conservatives.
What's your theory, John?
You want me to do it?
Just do your theory.
All right. I'll run through it. Okay. So the battle of the sexes, right? It's this historical, traditional fight between men and women. Every couple, heterosexual couple, encounters this, and probably homosexual couples too. You get this, I don't know if you can characterize it. The woman complains about such and such. The man says, your argument is illogical. Here's why. And the woman continues to fight. The man is perplexed. What did I do wrong? She continues to yell at them. Both sides think the other person is just dead wrong. You're just wrong. I don't get it. Why are women like this? Why are men like this? It's just this historic battle. It never gets solved. There's no magic word. As men, I think, when it argues with their female significant others, they think, all right, if I could just figure out the right words to solve this argument next time, I could avoid this fight. Never works, right? Like a lot of times, I don't know if this characterization is correct, but what women are really complaining about is not the thing they're saying, but they want more engagement from the man. So they start a fight as a way of getting the man to show emotion or something. So there's these things that the men don't understand that are the reasons for the argument. But during the argument, it's just one versus the other, insoluble conflict. But, correct me if I'm wrong, but afterwards, I think both parties often see the light and they see that, okay, it wasn't just that she's wrong or he's wrong. It's that both sides had a point. And at the end of the day, this conflict between men and women is kind of necessary, right? It's like it creates the friction, perhaps, that allows all of reproduction to occur. It makes things interesting in a way that's necessary to nature. The conflict between men and women will never be solved by a well-written paragraph or a theory or any book or anything. It's just always going to happen. I think we're all agreed on that. My theory was that the liberal-conservative divide might be a mirror of that. In other words, as liberals, we always think, we just think they're just wrong. Conservatives are just wrong. Why do they support this? They're wrong on all of these issues. They're always against on the wrong side of history. They're always fighting for this evil thing. So we end up thinking they must either be evil or stupid. And then on the conservative side, they see liberals, and it's just, God, there's this pox on American culture. It's just this disease of liberalism, of socialism, of entitlement, of political correctness. It's destroying the fabric of what made this nation great. It's socialist. It's an infiltration of communist ideas. It's bad. It just leads to sin. It leads to sex. It leads to drugs. Why are these liberals are horrible people? They're either evil or stupid. What is wrong with them? They're always wrong, right? So my theory was that perhaps that divide is a necessary cultural friction, much like that between man and women. So if you take another cultural friction like black people and white people, for example, that's not a necessary cultural friction, right? That's just a product of a place and time and circumstance. It's just...
Right. It doesn't advance our society.
Yeah, there's nothing essential about it. There's other cultures where there's no tension maybe between blacks and whites. It's not necessary to the fabric of anything. But maybe liberalism versus conservatism is essential, right? So it would kind of... this theory, my theory here, it's not going to solve any problem of this conflict between these two political ideologies, but it might work to give us like some perspective or this, like we can still debate the issues, but without, it's very radical agnostic, right? We can debate the issues, but without thinking, why is this person wrong? In other words, you're just thinking, well, there's always got to be this guy. There's always got to be this conservative guy who's going to oppose my liberal view. Or there's always got to be this liberal, because liberalism is the idea of change and opening up society to new things and making things better. Conservatism is all about preserving that which is good and that which is important in the culture and not letting change happen too fast. Because it's true, if liberalism unleashed is just chaos, right?
I mean, either side. If conservatives had won every single argument since the inception of this country, we would not want to live in that country.
Well, we wouldn't have a country because the conservatives of that time were loyalists.
Yeah.
Then, secondly, we would have slavery.
Yeah, the flip side, if liberals had won every single
it'd be madness.
Yeah.
So there would be no laws. Dogs could marry cats, and it would just be insanity. Yeah, exactly. And I did want to mention a few funny contradictions within liberalism. Like liberalism unchecked, I can't find it, but it'll result in things like among liberals you get all these debates. Like I've mentioned before, feminism versus multiculturalism. Like you're a liberal, you say, well, every culture is its own thing, and we shouldn't judge them or force our opinions. But feminists say, no, the way that culture treats women is wrong objectively, so we should change the way they are. And that's a contradiction within liberalism. And then there's a lot of others, like, should a transsexual person be allowed to fight women in MMA, right? So there was that man who transitioned to a woman physically and with hormones, and then joined women's MMA.
And I would probably take the conservative side on that one. And I would say, no. I don't think she should be able to fight.
Because you got different bone structure. Yeah, she's been taking estrogen, but she could just stop taking estrogen for a while, and that would be the same thing as juicing.
But then you're going to be pissing off all the people that think that men and women are the same and they're equal.
Yeah, but it's a contradiction within liberalism, right? Because if you let this woman who's now a man, or a man who's now a woman, fight women in the cage, then you're watching someone who used to be a man, even if you're the liberal. You say, great, I'm so happy that they changed and that they're a woman now, and I'll call them a woman, and everything is great. And then you see that person with large shoulders and a big bone structure and bigger hands than women smashing women in the face, and that's domestic. But
women should be able to do the same jobs as men, and women are just as equal to any man and just as strong.
But the people who say that hate domestic violence. They hate the idea of any man beating a woman, is what I'm saying. So you get a contradiction within liberalism. Or people who support transsexuals, but say I just go to the gym and I just say I identify as a woman. I'm going into the women's locker room and I just go in there and ogle all the ladies while they're changing. That's a contradiction within liberalism. My whole point is, if liberalism unchecked results in all these contradictions.
Well, and I think it's one thing to love the theories on the liberal side of things, but a lot of times the practicality of a lot of the stances that liberals take. For example, the idea of welfare. I think we all support the theory of welfare, but then when you look at how sometimes it's practically applied, you go, well, that's not really a great system. Like there's a lot of flaws in that system. Again, like you said with the transgender thing, it sounds great until, like you said, you start getting into, well, at what point are you allowed to use a female bathroom? At what point are you allowed to use a female locker room? At what point are you allowed to compete in female sports?
Yeah, and all of a sudden,
and then you start going, well, now there's practicality.
Well, because now all of a sudden you're dragging back some of the things that feminism achieved, like protecting women from sexual violence and stuff. Now the transsexual thing, if you go too far with it, you're losing some of that ground as a feminist, because now you got men looking at women naked in the locker room and all this, or men beating women up in a cage in MMA, or it's not a man, but
in the military we had this problem. It's a huge problem, which is everyone wants females to be able to serve in the infantry, on the frontline infantry units, and you go, okay. Well, women are on a different PT scale than men are.
Right.
So for a woman to pass her PT test, she has to do like 20-something push-ups.
Yeah.
Well, for a man to pass his PT test, he has to do 40-something push-ups.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes, okay, well, if you want the equal treatment of being in an infantry unit, you should have to meet the same standard as an infantryman, which is... I want to say like 44 push-ups, 54 sit-ups.
Right.
You better be able to run your 2 miles in under 16 minutes,
yep.
which not a lot of women can do. Plus, then all the other standards of 12-mile ruck march.
Well, all the women who have
because
the special forces, they don't give you a different PT thing. So the women have to, like, to be an Army Ranger or whatever, a Navy SEAL, they have to do the same shit, and none of them
women can't even apply. Well, now they're starting to apply. A few women tried to go through Ranger School.
There's like a test program they have where they let them try.
No, there's been, I want to say maybe it was like 8 that tried to go through Ranger School, and they passed the PT portion of it, because the Ranger PT test is 49 push-ups, 59 sit-ups, and a 40-minute 5-mile run, and they passed that. Well, I don't want to say all of them passed that, but many of them passed it.
But they failed out of that.
But it was the patrolling part of it, and they got peered out because they weren't carrying the same weight as their male counterparts. They weren't doing the same job, And so you get into this where it's like, in theory, it sounds great that a woman should be able to have that job. You should not be able to say no women allowed. But in practicality, then you also have to take away that separate PT test from it, because you got to say, if we're going into combat, you better be able to carry that rifle. Right. You better be able to move.
Carry me.
If I get shot. Yeah, if I get shot, you better be able to throw me over your shoulder and carry me out of here. So it's that practicality versus theory. In theory, I'm all about there should be no job close to women, but in practicality...
Plus, this is a great example of the contradictions within liberalism I was talking about, because say as a feminist, you're fighting for women to be able to fight in combat, and say you get that, you win, they go to combat. What you get from that? Dead women. You get dead women. You get women getting shot because they went into combat. So
you're proving that you're as good as men.
But that was your goal then. So as a feminist, you wanted women to have this right, and then the result of you winning that right is being dead, is getting shot.
Well,
is that really a victory for feminism?
No, sounds like gay marriage.
Well,
because marriage is like getting shot. I agree.
I mean, another big liberal one that sounds better in theory than in practicality sometimes. So I hate to argue the slippery slope arguments, and I usually stay away from them. But what about polygamy? What about if you want a second wife?
Yeah.
Right now, the big slogan is love wins. Well, what if you are in love with 2 women and they are both in love with you, and they are consenting to you having 2 wives?
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to discredit the gay marriage. I think that was a great step, and I'm not trying to be one of those guys, because I will not take it to the level of, what if you want to marry your dog? Or what if you want to marry a 6-year-old? No, I'm not going to that level.
Right.
But, I mean, there's arguments to be made that, like, polygamy, like unforced polygamy. I'm not talking about the old school religious, like
Mormon.
Yeah, you get married off at 13 and you're one of 85 wives.
Yeah, consensual polygamy.
But what if there's consensual? What if it's a woman who wants 2 husbands? You know what I mean?
Right.
Now, I mean, wouldn't that be a feminist?
Yeah.
Boon? I mean, wouldn't it be like if you allowed women to marry 2 guys? Like, I don't know. I think sometimes there's things that in theory sound great, but in practicality, you have to draw some lines. And
now the law of the land is that you can marry any person that you want, right? No matter what their sex is, as long as they're not married to someone else.
And they're an adult. Yeah.
Right, and they're an adult. So I want to marry Coca-Cola, because we've already determined that corporations are people, right? I'll marry Coca-Cola and divorce his ass and fucking get half his shit.
Yeah, it's all valid points. But anyway, my whole point was that liberalism versus conservatism might be a necessary conflict.
It is.
In that way,
it's part of what's made our country what it is.
Part of what makes any.
If you ever have one viewpoint that has unchecked power, then you're gonna live in a bad society.
Right. Except for the problem with that is you're saying that we don't just have one viewpoint. We have two viewpoints. And
there's two forces.
I think there's more than that. I think there's a multitude of viewpoints.
Yeah.
I think when people talk about liberals and conservatives, or men and women, or whatever, they lose sight of that, and they think that there's only two sides to something. Right. To some argument, to some problem, to some discussion, to whatever. That's why I always hated Crossfire.
Yeah. Well, it's true. But I mean, there's so many.
I think
when it's man versus woman, there's so many. That's the 99% of all.
But what's man and woman?
Right.
Like,
what
counts like people say like, oh well, all men, they won't ask for directions.
Right.
It's like, no, there's men who'll ask for directions.
Yeah, but a lot of
there's women who won't ask for directions.
Right.
So what the fuck are you talking about?
A lot of those generalizations are accurate, though, broadly. And so you can't just deny...
Generalizations are accurate broadly?
Well...
I'll give you that.
No, that's not, I'm not contradicting myself. A generalization could be
I didn't say you were
inaccurate.
Contradicting yourself. Generalization is accurate broadly is completely correct.
Some generalizations
means nothing, but it's completely correct.
No. I'm saying some of them demonstrably are. In other words, that men are like this and women are like this is... Some
like
of those
what? Like what? Name one.
Men are more inclined to... Women will tend to... I don't want to say anything that I don't necessarily agree with. God, come on, Mark. There's got to be a million of them.
No, but what I'm saying is...
When a man argues with a woman, isn't it often a predictable script? The woman, like...
Because people are following
the literal point of the woman's argument turns out to be invalid, but just the emotional...
You're correct about that, but what I'm saying is, because people are following this script. There is a script that society has handed you. Now, it's your responsibility or choice, whatever, to take that script and go, I'm going to follow this. I'm going to read it.
Gender is more than just social construct. It gloms on to in some aspect to sex, to biology,
like pink and blue. Like I want to be a fireman, and
because
you want to be a
hormones have an effect.
Like
hormones have a behavioral effect.
I agree with both of you. I agree with Beef that I think a lot of gender roles are social construct, but I agree with John in that there are things that are naturally. For example, I think men make better soldiers, or in the old days, warriors.
Yeah.
Biologically, we're bigger, faster, and stronger.
Yeah.
I think that women make better parents. When you're talking about a baby, now
you had to choose one.
Yeah. Now, I will say this: I think a lot of men use that bullshit excuse to get out of raising a kid because they go like a man could be a perfectly good single father, just like a woman could be a perfectly good warrior. I mean, it's not a universal thing, but I will say there are things we are predisposed to, and I would say women are predisposed to being better parents of young children.
I think women make better politicians, too, in some ways, and sometimes CEOs, too. I actually think they, it's not all just stereotypical.
I don't know about that, but I'll agree with Nick, but I'll say that that's because of biology. I mean, women give birth to offspring.
Yeah.
No, we don't. Men do not. So that's like the main... That's the one thing that I would say, yes. How do you determine if you're a man or a woman? Can you give birth? No, you're a man. But then there's even stuff in that, because like if you're a sterile woman, then whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But, and then I would agree with that about... So the men are generally soldiers, warriors, whatever, to protect the offspring and the women who are producing them.
But Mark, your point is always that since exception X exists, every argument that did not take exception X into account is therefore invalid.
I'm not sure about that, but what I am saying is that... Because you
said there are men that ask for directions and there's women that don't, but isn't it true that men, there's like a pride thing going on where men generally choose not to ask for directions, or
I don't know. I haven't taken the study. I haven't found out, taken the polls and found all the statistics. So I don't know if there's a majority of men who won't ask for directions over a minority who will. Right. I don't know that.
Okay, fair enough.
And even if I did know that, and someone handed me a sheaf of papers going, well, here's the stats right here, I've told you already my belief about stats.
We'll get into that next week.
I would say that's
ridiculous.
I would say that
you don't think that you can
misuse stats? Yes, you can, but the educated person will take those things into account. It's like you can misuse a spatula. That doesn't mean they're all bad.
But it does mean that possibly
for a lot of weird stuff, man.
Possibly your numbers aren't actually truthful.
You're saying the question of whether statistical results are actually correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very important correction. That's what peer review is for. Anyway, the point of my theory was that maybe we could look at this divide as not like a lot of people want to cure. Like the point of the radical agnostic is not to cure the divide between liberalism and conservatism or to ride the middle. I don't like the middle because the middle is arbitrary. It's just where American culture is right now. If you looked for the political middle, that's just an arbitrary middle. In Europe, that would be a conservative view. So I don't say go for the middle or anything. I say maybe this divide is necessary. Most of us are going to have to land or choose on one side or another of that divide.
Why?
Issue by issue, so you can give an answer to an issue.
But like I said, what if there's a multitude of viewpoints? What if there's not just two?
Yeah, those should be considered as well. But my theory, and
I would refer you back to your opening quotes.
Not to believe anything, but that's my point. I'm saying that by accepting my theory here, you can be like me, which is kind of liberal on a lot of stuff, but saying that I'm not. My opinion on this issue, even though I have it, it's not objectively right. It's not that anyone who disagrees with it has to be wrong. It's that I'm taking this stance on this time because that's just who I am. I can't be the God's eye view on everything and just be objective and have no opinion. But I'm a human, so I'm going to dive in. I'm going to take this thing, but I understand that I'm part of a cultural force for liberalism, and there's a cultural force for conservatism that's equally necessary. That's just kind of the point of my theory.
But back to what you said a second ago, where you said that you don't support people being in the middle. I find myself in the middle on a lot of issues, like what we were just talking about not too long ago with the TPP.
Yeah,
you guys have already decided that you are against it.
Yeah,
my thing is that.
Well, I'm just against the secrecy. That's all. Like okay. I don't know what it is going to do, or I can't proclaim, but I'm against it. So
you're kind of in the middle with me then on the actual thing itself, and that I want to wait to see.
I'm also cynical, so I'm.
Yeah, that's where me and Beef I think is naturally cynical, and I'm naturally optimistic.
Yeah, it's an age thing a lot of times. I mean, young people have that optimism because they haven't had their hearts broken enough times.
But I mean, I would argue though that I've been.
But there's plenty of old people.
I was gonna say,
you're wise beyond your years for sure. I'm just.
Well, there's also plenty of old.
I'm probably wrong.
For me, from what I've seen more often than not, I think a lot of times there's an overreaction to jump to one side or the other.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And so there are certain issues. Too is a temptation.
So there are certain issues that I have over time. I've seen enough, and I know where I stand. Gay marriage needs to be legalized. I've tried to hear all of the dissenting opinions. None of them have swayed me. It's time for that. But then there are plenty of things, though, that I'm still absolutely on the fence about. You always talk with Brian about the gun control stuff. I'm absolutely in the middle on that, and that I don't really buy either side's argument. No, I'm kind of okay with the status quo of where we're at.
My point was just, I misspoke. My point was only, like, some people think it's virtuous to seek the middle ground on every topic always, because you don't ever want to be a partisan. And that's what this show could have been about. It could have been misinterpreted that radical agnostic is just never be a partisan, never come to a conclusion, always run down the middle. And I don't believe in that. It's radical agnostic just means that at any time, I think Ryan gave me a good definition, my friend Ryan Lauco, at any time, new evidence could sway your view. whatever it is, and that you're open and seeking new evidence at all times, and that your opinion on any issue is not tied to your identity as a human being. In other words, you won't get mad if someone opposes that issue because it's part of you. That's a bad thing in my view. So radical agnosticism is, come to a conclusion, but don't identify with it so that it makes you angry when people oppose you.
But that's the problem with most people, is when they come to a conclusion,
they adopt
do adopt it.
Yeah.
Because
there's comfort in that.
And if you challenge that, they're not.
And that's what I'm trying to make my life be, against. That wasn't well spoken. So, all right, that's it. Nick, you always drag us into deep water. But that was episode 17, guys. We're pretty much steady on our listenership. It's not very big, but we're just going to keep hammering along, and we'll do 50 episodes and see where it is at that point.
It's not very big, but we're going to keep hammering along. You'll eventually feel something.
Well played, sir. That's it, guys. Listen to New Music Sound Circus. It's a radio show my friend Bo makes. Just look it up on Facebook. Concerto for the Deaf is a rock radio show, also very nice, very good. And I'm going to try to get this thing on iTunes pretty soon. Some people want that. So hit us up with your suggestions, guests. If you want to be a guest, hit me up. Comments, where are we wrong, where are we right? And thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
You should hit up Obama and see if he wants to come on here as a guest.
Yeah, why didn't he come on my podcast? Mark Maron. Anyway, you guys should listen to that interview.
Maron gets Obama and you get me.
Yeah. I say it's a fair trade. Yeah. There's no sniper on my neighbor's roof like there was with Mark Maron.
Secret Service sniper? There might be snipers on these roofs.
Yeah, they probably are. You guys listen to that interview though with Mark Maron and Obama. It's really good. I listened to it, and man, it makes you want to like the guy so bad. Like every time,
I don't dislike him.
I know, but every time,
like I would, I'm sure if I met him and like we were drinking a beer, I'd be like, yeah, he's fine.
He's cool. Yeah.
And also, if you're listening to Maron's podcast, go back and find the episode where he has Louis C.K. on, who we talked about earlier. It's a great episode.
It really is.
The other one,
they get over their beef that they had.
When you really hear about like the history of kind of that stand-up comedy
Boston scene, the East Coast,
which so many guys are. I mean, you love Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan came out of that same scene, and
he knew Maron from the start too.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. That's one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to. Was with
I've
those
heard
two
that
guys.
one is awesome.
And I would say that my favorite Mark Maron podcast is when he had Gallagher on.
He did?
Yeah.
Oh.
Should listen to it.
I'm gonna
now
let
the
that
real
one
Gallagher, or
the real Gallagher. Well, I don't know.
It was the original one. The original,
because he sold his act to someone
Gallagher
else.
Too.
Yeah. Which, by the way, come on.
I'm gonna smash fruit.
Yeah,
like after it's already not cool anymore.
Wasn't he like in Branson? He might still be in Branson, I think. Or just some.
I think he's a good guy. You gotta love Gallagher, man.
I'll listen to the podcast.
Okay.
Apparently, Yakov Smirnoff wasn't available that way.
Or Weird Al.
Yeah, weird.
All right, guys. Later.